This is a bone. It belongs to a child. The child died 9,000 years ago, before the wheel, before writing, before any civilization you have ever heard of existed. Scientists found the child beneath the seabed off the coast of modern-day Israel, in a sunken city called Alit Yam. They extracted DNA from the bone, and what they found changed how we think about human history. The child had tuberculosis 9,000 years ago. The mother buried next to her, also tuberculosis. These were not the first human beings to suffer from disease, not by a long way. Scientists have now mapped human pathogens stretching back 37,000 years, extracted from teeth, from bones, from frozen bodies locked in permafrost. And what that data tells us is this: disease did not begin with civilization. Disease began with us. It was here before cities, before agriculture, before we were even recognizably human. This is episode 1. This is where it all starts. "200,000 years ago, in the grasslands of sub-Saharan Africa, a new species appeared. Us. Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans, roughly the same body you are sitting in right now. We were small groups, mobile, hunter-gatherers, following animals and seasonal plants across the landscape. Bands of maybe 20, 30 people, moving constantly, rarely staying anywhere long enough to leave a mark. And here is the thing that most history books get wrong. We were already sick. Not from the plagues you've heard of, not from cholera or smallpox or the Black Death. Those came later, centuries, millennia later. But from the moment Homo sapiens emerged as a species, pathogens were already present, already evolving, already adapting to us. Scientists now believe that at least 20 of the major diseases that still afflict human beings today have their certain or probable origins in sub-Saharan Africa, in that exact period, in those exact landscapes. Hepatitis B, malaria, HIV, sleeping sickness, leprosy, dengue fever. All of them ancient, all of them African, all of them older than recorded history by tens of thousands of years. This is not ancient history, this is our biology, and it starts here.
Before we go any further, let's make sure we understand exactly what we are dealing with. A pathogen is any organism that causes disease in a host. Simple definition: enormous consequences. They come in several categories. Bacteria, single-celled organisms, independent, alive in the truest sense, capable of reproduction, adaptation, evolution. The fastest evolving entities on Earth. One bacterium can become 1 billion in 10 hours. Viruses, not technically alive at all, fragments of genetic code wrapped in protein. They cannot reproduce on their own. They need a host cell. They hijack it. They use your own cellular machinery to replicate themselves, and in doing so, they can destroy you from the inside out. Parasites, organisms that live within or on a host, deriving benefit at the host's expense. Some are microscopic. Some, like tapeworms, are very much not. Fungi, mostly harmless in the external world. In a compromised host, potentially lethal. Right now, as you watch this, there are approximately 37 trillion cells in your body, and there are roughly the same number of bacterial cells living on and in you. You are not a person with microbes. You are, in a very real sense, a walking ecosystem. Most of those microbes are neutral or beneficial. But evolution has produced across billions of years organisms that thrive by consuming us
and they have been doing it for far longer than we have been resisting. In 2024, scientists published a remarkable finding. Inside the 50,000-year-old bones of two Neanderthals, unearthed in the Chagirskaya cave in the Altai Mountains of Russia, they found something extraordinary. Viral DNA. 3 modern human viruses: an adenovirus, a herpes virus, a papillomavirus. These are viruses we recognize today, viruses that billions of people carry right now. And they were present in Neanderthal bones 50,000 years ago. That finding matters enormously, because here is what it tells us. When Homo sapiens migrated out of Africa and encountered Neanderthals in Europe and Asia, we didn't just meet them, we infected them. We carried diseases from Africa to which we had developed some immunity through millennia of exposure. Neanderthals had no such exposure. Some researchers now believe that the diseases we carried may have contributed to their extinction. Think about that. 40,000 years ago, a species of human, intelligent, social, skilled, may have been wiped out in part because they met us. Sound familiar? It should, because in episode 7 of this series, we will watch it happen again, in 1520, in the Americas, and the death toll will be measured in tens of millions. The pattern begins here, in a Siberian cave, 50,000 years ago. So, how do we know any of this? How do scientists read disease from a bone that is 10,000 years old? The answer is ancient DNA, and the technology that makes it possible has transformed our entire understanding of human history. Here is how it works. When a person dies, their body decomposes. The DNA in their cells fragments and decays. Within a few thousand years, most of it is gone. But there are exceptions. The enamel of human teeth is the hardest biological substance in the body. It acts as a natural vault, sealing the dentine beneath it. And within that dentine, tiny quantities of DNA can survive for extraordinary periods of time, tens of thousands of years under the right conditions. Ancient permafrost can do the same. Bodies frozen in ice from Siberia, from the Alps, from the high Andes can preserve DNA almost indefinitely. Scientists now extract these ancient samples, amplify the fragments using PCR, polymerase chain reaction, filter out contamination from modern DNA, and read what remains. In 2025, a landmark study published in the journal Nature analyzed ancient DNA from 1,313 prehistoric humans from across Europe and Asia, spanning 37,000 years of human history. They found traces of 214 distinct human pathogens. 214. The oldest, the bacterium behind diphtheria, Corynecobacterium diphtheriae, was found in Mesolithic remains dated to 11,400 years ago. Let me be clear about what that number means. 11,400 years before the present. That is roughly 9,400 BCE, before the Great Pyramid of Giza existed, before Stonehenge existed, before any written language existed anywhere on Earth, and we were already carrying diphtheria. When modern humans left Africa, roughly 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, they didn't travel alone. They carried with them a biological cargo that would reshape the health of every human population on Earth. Scientists now believe that at least 20 major diseases have their certain or probable origins in sub-Saharan Africa, carried out of the continent by the very first migrations. Among them, hepatitis B,
a virus that today chronically infects nearly 300 million people worldwide, killing over 800,000 every year. Evidence of hepatitis B has been found in Neolithic human remains from across Europe and Asia, but its origins are African and ancient. Among them, malaria, caused by the Plasmodium falciparum parasite. Scientists have traced the evolutionary divergence of this parasite to a period roughly 100,000 years ago in sub-Saharan Africa. It has been killing human beings for almost as long as human beings have existed. Among them, leprosy, caused by Mycobacterium leprae. Although the first written record of leprosy is from India around 600 BCE, molecular clock analysis of the bacterium's DNA suggests it is far, far older, probably originating in Africa during the Paleolithic period. The bacterium evolves so slowly, so few mutations, that its genetic diversity across the planet is surprisingly low, which tells us it went through a bottleneck, a moment of near extinction, and then it survived and spread everywhere. These pathogens did not emerge because of civilization. They evolved alongside us, in the same African landscapes over the same hundreds of thousands of years as we did. They are, in the most literal sense, our oldest companions.
Your immune system is the product of 200 million years of vertebrate evolution. Let that number settle for a moment. 200 million years of an arms race between life forms, pathogens trying to invade, hosts developing ways to repel them. What you carry in your body right now is not a simple defense system. It is the accumulated result of every infection, every adaptation, every evolutionary pressure that your ancestors ever survived. The innate immune system, your first line of defense, is ancient, shared across almost all multicellular life. It is fast, non-specific, and brutal. When a pathogen enters your body, the innate system triggers within minutes. White blood cells called macrophages, the word literally means big eaters, engulf and destroy invaders. Inflammation floods the area. You feel hot, swollen, feverish. That fever is not the disease. That fever is you fighting. The adaptive immune system is more recent in evolutionary terms and far more sophisticated. It learns, it remembers. When your body encounters a specific pathogen, say the measles virus, B cells produce antibodies precisely tailored to that pathogen's surface proteins. And when the fight is over, memory B cells retain the blueprint. If that pathogen returns, the response is faster, stronger, and more targeted. This is the mechanism behind vaccination. This is the mechanism Edward Jenner intuited in 1796. And this is the mechanism that has saved more human lives than any other medical intervention in history. But here is the thing about the immune system that deserves to be said clearly. It is not perfect. It was never designed to be. It is the product of evolution, not engineering. It gets it wrong. It overshoots. It attacks the body's own tissue. That is autoimmune disease. It misidentifies harmless substances as threats. That is allergy. And when it encounters a truly novel pathogen, one it has never seen before, one to which your evolutionary lineage has no prior exposure, it can fail completely. That vulnerability is not a flaw. It is the condition of being alive in a world that is also always trying to survive.
Here is something most people do not know about themselves. If you are of non-African descent, European, Asian, Pacific Islander, between 1 and 4% of your DNA is not Homo sapiens. It is Neanderthal. When our ancestors left Africa and encountered Neanderthal populations in Europe and Asia, they did not just coexist, they interbred. And the genetic material that entered the modern human gene pool from those encounters was not random. Natural selection kept the useful bits. And a significant proportion of what was kept came from a very specific category of genes: immune genes. Neanderthals had spent 600,000 years adapting to the environments of Europe and Asia, and to the pathogens that lived in those environments. Their immune systems had encountered, fought, and developed resistance to threats that were completely new to incoming Homo sapiens populations. When our ancestors interbred with them and inherited those immune variants, they gained something invaluable, a pre-built toolkit for surviving in new environments. In particular, Neanderthal-derived variants in a cluster of genes called the toll-like receptors, TLR1, TLR6, and TLR10, which are part of the innate immune system's pathogen recognition apparatus, have been identified in populations of European descent. These variants help the innate immune system detect and respond to bacterial invaders more effectively. We did not just inherit their bones, we inherited their immune memory. And in doing so, we absorbed, literally into our own genetic code, the biological lessons of 600,000 years of Neanderthal survival. This is one of the most remarkable facts in all of human biology, and it means that the story of human immunity is not just our story, it is the story of every human species that came before us.
But evolution always has a cost. The very immune genes that Neanderthal interbreeding introduced into non-African human populations, the same variants associated with stronger bacterial pathogen detection, are also associated with increased susceptibility to autoimmune conditions. Alleles linked to resistance to bacterial infections in cold, pathogen-rich European environments have been found to correlate with higher rates of asthma, eczema, and allergic disorders in modern populations. This is called antagonistic pleiotropy, a single gene variant that helps you survive one threat also increases your vulnerability to another. It is the fundamental trade-off at the heart of human immunity, and it explains something that should deeply unsettle us. The modern explosion in autoimmune disease, conditions like Crohn's, lupus, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, is not random. It is partly the signature of an immune system that evolved in a very different world, now operating in a world it was never designed for. We removed the pathogens, we cleaned the water, we created antibiotics, we vaccinated, we did extraordinary things. And our immune systems, calibrated by hundreds of thousands of years of constant infection, are now, in some cases, turning on us, looking for threats that are no longer there. The war against disease has had consequences we are still living with, and we will return to that story in a later episode, when we look at what the modern world is doing to the biology we inherited from the ancient one. Here is a question that is easier to ask than to answer. What did prehistoric humans do when they got sick? The honest answer is, we don't fully know, because they left no written records, and most of what they used, plants, animal products, organic compounds, does not survive in the archaeological record. But we have clues. We know that some prehistoric remains show evidence of deliberate medical intervention. Skulls with trepanation, holes deliberately cut into the bone, some of them showing signs of healing, which means the patient survived the procedure. These surgeries date back as far as 7000 BCE. People were cutting into human skulls, and people were living through it. We know that Otzi the Iceman, the 5,300-year-old mummy found preserved in the Alps in 1991, was carrying a remarkable medical kit. He had fresh blackthorn berries, which have anti-inflammatory properties. He had 2 pieces of birch fungus, Piptoporus betulius, on a leather cord. That fungus contains compounds with antibiotic properties. Otzi also had Lyme disease, intestinal parasites, and arteriosclerosis. He was a walking case study in prehistoric illness, and he was clearly trying to treat himself. More broadly, there is substantial botanical evidence across prehistoric cultures of the systematic use of medicinal plants. Willow bark, containing salicylic acid, the precursor to aspirin. Yarrow, documented in multiple ancient cultures as a wound treatment. Garlic, one of the oldest known antimicrobial agents in human use. Did these treatments work? Some of them, yes, at least partially. The active compounds in willow bark genuinely reduce fever. Garlic has demonstrable antibacterial properties. But here is the critical limitation these people faced. They did not know why people got sick. They had no concept of pathogens, no concept of infection, no germ theory, no microscope, no understanding of the invisible world that was making them ill. They observed, they experimented, they developed traditions and passed them down, but they were flying completely blind, and they would continue to fly blind for the next 10,000 years.
The bones speak if you know how to listen. Paleopathology, the study of disease in ancient remains, has given us a profound and often devastating window into prehistoric suffering. We can see tuberculosis eating into spinal vertebrae, a condition called Pott's disease, in skeletons from 9,000 years ago. We can see leprosy destroying the bones of the face and extremities in medieval European remains. We can see the cortical thickening of tibiae associated with treponematosis, a family of diseases that includes syphilis, in prehistoric skeletons from across the globe. We can see trauma, healed fractures that tell us a violence survived, unhealed fractures that tell us of violence that wasn't. We can see childhood illness in the teeth. Periods of metabolic stress during tooth development leave permanent horizontal lines in the enamel, called enamel hypoplasia. In populations under significant disease burden, these lines are common, consistent. A record of suffering written into the teeth of children who died thousands of years ago. And perhaps most movingly, we can sometimes see care. In several prehistoric burial sites, researchers have found individuals with severe physical disabilities, missing limbs, debilitating conditions, who survived far longer than they could have survived alone. Which means someone was feeding them, someone was tending to them. Someone decided that a person who could no longer hunt or gather was still worth keeping alive. Disease, suffering, and human compassion are all as old as our species. They were there in the beginning. They are with us, still.
And then, something changes. Around 10,000 years ago, in the river valleys of the Middle East, in the highlands of New Guinea, in the Yellow River Basin of China, human beings made a decision that would alter the course of life on Earth. They stopped moving. They planted seeds. They domesticated animals. They built permanent shelters. They formed communities, then towns, then cities. And in doing so, they handed disease the greatest gift it had ever received. For hundreds of thousands of years, pathogens had faced a fundamental constraint when dealing with small, mobile human groups. Epidemic diseases, the kind that spread rapidly through populations and burn themselves out, couldn't get a foothold. If a group was small enough and mobile enough, a lethal pathogen would run out of new hosts before it could establish itself. The group would move on. The pathogen would die out. But a village of 1,000 people? A city of 10,000? That is a different calculation entirely. Now there was density. Contaminated water shared by hundreds. Domestic animals living alongside people. Cattle, pigs, chickens, dogs. Each one a potential reservoir for pathogens jumping the species barrier into human populations. The measles virus, which kills hundreds of thousands of children every year, even today, diverged from a cattle virus called rinderpest somewhere around the 6th century BCE, the moment cities in the ancient world grew large enough to sustain continuous transmission. Before that moment, measles could not exist as a human disease. It needed too many hosts. The city gave it what it needed. Smallpox, influenza, typhoid, cholera. All of them products, at least in part, of the same transition. Civilization and epidemic disease were born together. That story, in its full, devastating detail, begins in the next episode. But first, before we go, I want you to hold on to something. Those ancient people we talked about today, the child in Alid Yam, the Neanderthal in the Altai cave, Otzi on the Alpine ice, the hunter-gatherers moving across the African savanna carrying pathogens they had no names for. They were sick, and they survived. Not all of them, not always, but enough of them. Generation after generation, for 200,000 years, enough of them survived to pass their genes, and their immune systems, and their microbes, and their pathogens, to the next generation. You are the result of that survival. Every antibody in your blood is a record of something your ancestors overcame. Every immune gene is a scar from a war they won on your behalf. The battle between human beings and disease did not begin with the Black Death, or smallpox, or the Spanish flu. It began in the same moment we did, and it has never stopped.
That is where this story begins. In the dark, in the bone, in the blood. Before history, before language, before anything we built or believed or became, the silent machine was already running. Next episode, the price of civilization. When farming began and the greatest explosion of infectious disease in human history started with it. I'll see you there.